Hello and welcome wherever you are. My name's David Bird and I am the owner of Nilsbird Training. I hope you can hear me, and if you are watching this as a recording, I say welcome as well. So today I would like very much to begin with a brief history of Nilsbird Training. This is my first live stream ever on my own on YouTube, so I'm a little bit nervous, but I thought I'd have a go because you see so many people nowadays using social media as a way of engaging with their audience, engaging with whoever's interested in what they do. So a little bit of background about Nilsbird Training. Personally, I've been a teacher trainer for a number of years, and I've been involved with education since the late 1980s. 2009 was the first time that I went abroad for another organization as a teacher trainer. No doubt you can imagine I was quite nervous, and then ended up going to Pakistan, which was an interesting experience. And ever since then, I've been very keen on supporting teachers in different circumstances in different countries around the world, helping them become better educators in the classroom. So Nilsbird Training was begun in 2018, and as I say, it's my business, and I've got the shirt to prove it. And I started off with a bit of a UK context, but I've certainly moved from there to being very much focused on an international context, and that's even become even more focused by looking at particularly Africa at this time. I've just noticed something in my picture, which I will just remove. There we go. There's always something, isn't there, that could distract people away from the task at hand. So there. So yes, so my focus now is Africa, really trying to support people whose circumstances are not exactly maybe as easy as we have, let's say, in the West. I've been looking at pictures recently of teachers in Uganda, and I know they've been off school for a long period of time, and because of COVID. And you're seeing that, you know, even the last couple of days, I think one school was trying to operate and they got in trouble for that. So it hasn't exactly been easy for some countries, especially in Africa, I think, during the pandemic. I had just a bit more information of sharing. I managed to do a conference, including some teachers in Africa at the end of, some teachers from Uganda at the end of August. So we did a conference, involved some teachers from Zambia and the Gambia, Tanzania, Eswatini even. So, and I was really chuffed that I was able to actually bring a number of trainers together. And if you go onto the YouTube channel, you can see one or two of those. I think we've got one or two videos of the trainers talking in advance of the actual conference we did. So we did it over 3 days, and we shared lots of different things, very much a big focus on active learning, but we shared other ideas in maths and English and science as well. So that's just a bit of a brief background about Nilsbird Training. So what's this live stream all about? Well, I thought I would talk about CPD, in fact, for a few moments, and then move on to talk about active learning. And after that, maybe talk about where Nilsbird Training can go in the future and how you can be involved with things that we're doing. So CPD. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, what is actually CPD? Okay, well, continuous professional development is certainly words that I've seen that CPD stands for. I was reading a document recently where it didn't focus so much on CPD, but just on professional development. And I think whether we call it continuous professional development or just professional development, we have to consider how important is that to us as teachers. How important is it to us as teachers to have CPD or professional development? I know that we can sometimes, and I know I'm sure in the past I've been to some professional development courses, whether over a day or whatever, and you've wondered why actually you're there. You've wondered, well, am I actually gaining anything from being here? And I know that I'm sure if you talk to, if not from look at your own experience, but if you talk to some of your colleagues in your schools, in your country, you might get a similar view that they've been possibly to face-to-face conferences, or they've even done some online training in the last year because of the pandemic, and it hasn't actually been useful. So that's what I wanted us to focus on, really, just for a few minutes, is CPD and what are we trying to gain from it? What's the purpose of it? Now, for me, running Nilsbird training, I've always wanted to provide things that are particularly unique, because there is so much out there, but I've also wanted to provide things that people will find useful. Now, recently, I was sharing some survey questions with a WhatsApp group that I run, and to try and gauge some opinions of what people wanted from their CPD. And these were the three statements that I was looking for people to complete. So the first one was, over the next year, I want to learn more about, so that I can improve my students' progress in the classroom. So that was the first one, and the people had to write in what they want to learn more about. The second one, over the next year, I want to improve my understanding of, fill it in, so that I can improve my students' progress in the classroom. So that was the second one. And the third one was, over the next year, I want to improve my whatever, so that I can perform more effectively as a teacher and support my personal well-being. So for me, in those three statements, I was trying to focus on student progress. Do we want CPD for student progress? That was my first statement. Is that what we're trying to get CPD or professional development for? In my second one, I was covering a similar kind of thing, but it was about trying to improve the teacher's personal understanding of maybe their topic, or a particular topic even, or the subject area that they work in. Maybe they work in more than one subject area. So over the next year, are they trying to consider improving their knowledge and understanding of their own subject? And my third point was really trying to get people to think about themselves as a teacher. Would they like CPD, and is CPD or professional development important for them because they just really want to be effective as a teacher for their own person? Because obviously there's some skills that are peculiar to your subject area, but there are other skills as a teacher that actually are generic, that are appropriate for all subjects. And personal well-being. I think we can use CPD to support our personal well-being, can't we? I know in the United Kingdom, there's been a lot of talk recently, or some talk recently, about mental health. And you can imagine, over the pandemic, over the last year, over the last 18 months in our different countries, we thought about the students' mental health and how that has suffered because of the pandemic or because of COVID. But what about teachers' mental health? Has that suffered because we've had that much of Zoom or whatever software you use, where we're a bit maybe fed up even with using online software, spending so many hours a day on a computer. I mean, I'm only going to be spending a few minutes today, but you can imagine, I'm doing online tutoring, and but imagine doing that day in, day out, because we can't get back into the classroom. And some of us maybe are even feeling, I just want to get back into the classroom. So professional development, even for our own well-being. you know, strengthening our own skills as a teacher. So those are just some thoughts on professional development. Why do we want to have professional development? I've tried to consider just those three statements I shared on my WhatsApp group, you know, trying to talk about having professional development so that we improve student progress. Talking about professional development so that we can improve student progress through greater understanding of our own subject. And really talking about professional development so that we can even just support our own mental health and our well-being in the classroom. So on that kind of point, that I throw open these questions to anybody who's watching or even just watching the recording. You know, are there courses that Nilsbird training could provide for you that could even support your mental health, your well-being? What courses might you be thinking could support your effectiveness no matter what subject you teach, you know, talking about generic skills? And what courses could Nilsbird training provide that support your knowledge and understanding of your subject if you maybe feel particularly weak in language arts or in a science? Or maybe you want to talk about professional development and you want courses that you think, how can I just raise the attainment of my students? How can I support them so that they just get better grades? So I'm interested in trying to help people with that. So do get in touch, and I'll mention about how to get in touch at the end of the live stream. So on to active learning. That was going to be the next thing I was just going to share a few thoughts on. I mean, as I said to you, this is my first try at live streaming. I already noticed I had a pan in the live stream, which didn't help. And maybe I need to learn how to have a better background. But, you know, it's about sharing thoughts. Just as an aside, I've actually started writing for a union magazine for Eswatini. So if you are in Eswatini or if you come across this recording and you're in SNAT, you might even have read my first article. So that was a new venture. And that was another way of me trying to provide professional development, but through the pen. But maybe more on that in another live stream. And what any reaction I'm getting to those articles that when the people read them. But turning to active learning, when we ran our conference at the end of August, active learning was very much a focus of the whole conference. You know, every trainer maybe came from a different angle, but we all spoke about the same kind of thing. You know, there's a difference between passive learning and active learning. Yeah. And you might think, David, what is the difference between passive learning and active learning? Well, I know one of the things I would discuss was passive learning is like you imagine a sponge, right? You've got your sponge in the bath, maybe, or in your shower, or however you manage to clean yourself. And, you know, the sponge takes in water. You know, it just sucks it up. You know, you have to squash it, get it out again. And I imagine passive learning to be a little bit like that. That the student is kind of just sitting there and taking in the information like a sponge. And, you know, but not really doing anything. You know, if you imagine a vegetable in the ground, it takes in its nutrients and it grows. And if you look up and if you tend and care for it, it grows really well. But if you don't do anything, maybe it just doesn't perform very well as a vegetable. And that's how I see passive learning. Passive learning is not wrong, because, you know, one of the things I like to say is that the white man, if we're discussing this concept of a Westerner coming along to another country, you know, that me from another country, no matter what color my skin, in fact, I don't have the right to actually tell you, the teacher, how to work in the classroom. I only have a job of saying, well, have you tried this or have you tried that? And very much, I've just seen somebody's comment. Thank you, Abel, for turning up and listening to my thoughts. We've got round to active learning. I did try to share some positive thoughts on CPD near the beginning. If you missed that, Abel, you go back and watch the recording from the beginning. But coming back to active learning, you know, passive learning, right, as I talked about being a bit like a sponge, I would say it has its place, right? The student having to take the information in. Maybe you're doing something from the board, they're having to write it down, you know, and that's really important. But the question is, if you do passive learning, let's say that's maybe even that's the way you learnt yourself, that the teachers that you learnt from had just wrote the stuff on the board and you copied it down, and they wrote loads of stuff on the board and you had to go away and learn it, you know, and maybe that's the way you teach because that's the way you learnt. I would say in some circumstances that has its place, passive learning. But the question is, does that actually really get the student to become a better student? Do they progress if they're just sucking it in like a sponge and learning it off by heart, for example? I think we'd have to look at the research, and when we think about even the courses that the CPD courses that Nilsbird Training wants to provide, do they have evidence to prove they're effective? I think if we looked about the evidence to prove that active learning is effective, I think we'd have to say yes. And you could go on the internet and find out all about active learning and research that proves that actually comparing active learning to passive learning, it's more effective. So what do I actually mean by active learning? I know some people might think, well, it has to be an activity that the student is doing. That's active learning. That is true. But if you actually stood at the front of the class and said, right, I want you to consider this thought for 2 minutes. I don't want you to discuss it with your partner. Let's say they're sitting in pairs. And I know in some circumstances with COVID, we haven't necessarily wanted to do group work so much, and students have had to all sit separately and face the front. But in an ideal circumstance, students can work in pairs and in groups. But I'm asking my students, right, on your own now, think about this thing for 2 minutes. Now, you might say, well, that's not active learning. But I actually would say that is, in fact, active learning, because you're asking the student to think. So active learning for me is what goes on in here. And other people, other trainers, other people, loads of people around the world, and I'm not claiming to be an expert on in this field particularly, it's about me sharing my opinion, the person coming along and saying, have you tried this, have you tried that? And it's the same with active learning. But for me as a trainer, I want to say to a teacher, right, active learning, it's about what goes on in here. It's about when you stand at the front of the classroom and you ask them questions. It's about asking them to think for themselves. Now, even just straight away, we can see there's a difference between that and the student just writing the information down and taking it in like a sponge. In one circumstance, are they really thinking because they're just copying it down? Well, yes, they easily could be. But in the other one, are they thinking more? Because rather than just writing something down, which you might have done, you might say, right, now you think about that. They might not even have to copy it down. So for me, active learning, there's a simple difference for me. And active learning, there's obviously, we can go into greater detail about it. And that's, as I say, the conference over 3 days did. It looked at active learning in maths. It looked at active learning in science. It looked at active learning in English. It's all about engagement for me, you know. So I'd say passive learning, yes, is fine. It has its place. But go and do the research, go and look up and compare the two and see that actually if you get your students thinking, asking questions of you, asking questions of each other, actually engaging in here, then I think you'll find active learning comes out on top in terms of making progress. So if you think about the statement that I asked my people on the WhatsApp group, over the next year, I want to learn more about so that I can improve my students' progress in the classroom. Somebody might have put, over the next year, I want to learn more about active learning so that I can improve my students' progress in the classroom. And I think if you looked up active learning and all the research on it and actually did that in the classroom more, even down to doing a think, pair, share, you will get better progress in your students. So those are just some thoughts on active learning. As I say, this is my first live stream, and it's not going to be perfect by any sense of the imagination. And but I'm just trying to share thoughts, and I think I've got, if Abel's the only one watching, that's great. Maybe I'll have more people watching next time, and maybe some people will be able to see the recordings. So, World Teachers Day, that was yesterday, and I've been promoting some webinars I've got coming up. So that's what I wanted to share now, focusing on CPD, professional development, how I can help you. I have provided some free tickets. Now, there are very cheap prices for these webinars because I want to support people whose circumstances are always different, but particularly I want to help people who find it difficult to get hold of good quality training, because normally it's quite a lot of money, which is why I try to keep my prices low, to really make sure that people can get access to good quality training. So we've got coming up next week free F-W-F-R-E-E, free ICT toolbox in the classroom. I have David Fuller, a very qualified gentleman, doing an ICT webinar next week. Now let me read out some of his qualifications to see the kind of people I have working here. So for example, David has an MA in electrical computing. He's a chartered engineer. He's a chartered IT professional. He's a member of the British Computer Society, and he, along with 2 or 3 others who you can see on the website, nilsbirdtraining.com, they've come and they've joined in with the project that I'm trying to do to help people whose circumstances maybe are more challenging than others, who can't afford professional development because it's expensive. So I've got a group of people who think like me, who are out there for supporting you, the customer. So, as I say, next Tuesday, David is going to do free ICT toolbox at 1600 GMT. Now, if you email, let me remember, special offers at nilsbirdtraining.com, you can have at this time a free ticket. I have free tickets available for that webinar. It lasts an hour, and David will be providing lots of different information about how you can engage your students with ICT for free. In other words, he's going to be looking at different resources that are available to enable free, ICT in the classroom. Doesn't cost you anything. So on my website, I've written, it will enable participants to acquire an ICT toolbox that they can use straight away to help them in their teaching and learning. And investigate types of free resources available to the participant, free apps, and how they can be used, right? And I was discussing this with David just recently. He is thinking about Africa. As I said, the focus of Nilsbird Training is trying to support teachers in Africa. So that is on Tuesday. Email me at the address I said to get a free ticket. Then on the 19th of October, David is doing another one. If you've only got one computer in the classroom, this is the webinar for you. Teaching ICT when you've only got one computer in the classroom. So on my website, I've put, and you can see it there for yourselves, it will enable participants to start to develop skills and techniques to help with the challenge of teaching a class with limited access to technology. And we're thinking about, you only have a computer, you have a screen, maybe you've got access to the internet via your phone, but not necessarily in the classroom. So David would investigate types of resources available to the participant. It's the only one. So the webinar, as I say, is called Teaching from a Single Computer with No Internet Access, although he will talk about internet access. And again, there are free tickets currently available because I was wanting to support people. When you think about World Teachers Day yesterday, and I've been following some of what people have been saying on Twitter, it's really important that we support each other, and which is why I'm coming in with some free tickets. Then on Wednesday the 20th, we have helping students. So I have another colleague of mine who thinks like me. That's the beauty of this. And Siobhan Parker, who's a very experienced international trainer, she'll be looking to help students learn subjects through English and additional language. And of course, being at home, my dog decided to react to somebody coming through the door. So I do apologize about that, but that's the thing with live streaming. So we've got Siobhan Parker seeking to support participants with ideas and best classroom practice to support their students who are studying English when they don't have it as their first language. So the webinar is called Helping Students Learn Subjects Through English as an Additional Language. So the main challenges will be outlined, along with specific examples of ideas to demonstrate how to reduce or remove language barriers. Now, I work for another organisation, and sometimes language can be an issue in exam papers. You know, if the paper's in English and you're sitting exams in English, but the student's language is not English, then you know how difficult that is, right? So there are 3 opportunities. Get a free ticket, email special offers at nilsbirdtraining.com, and you can have a free ticket to those events. And one more I'd like to share. Actually, from the 25th to the 29th of October, we are running our 5-day training event called Developing a Mathematics Professional. Now, at that event, which again, there are free tickets available, myself and 2 other trainers, one called Megan and another gentleman called Sanjit, both with their own practical experiences to bring towards you. We'll be covering things like why mathematics and effective strategies for any classroom situation, the world of problem solving, and things like work on questions. And again, there are free tickets available, and all the information is available on that and the other webinars. That's a series, that's 5 days of training, but and all the information for all of that is available on my website, nilsbirdtraining.com. And just to say, that's more than just the training. With the 5-day training, you get a WhatsApp group, you get resources, you get questionnaires. So there's quite a lot involved with work to do, and it's free. And okay, so just coming to the end, that's what I wanted to share. So what have I done today? I've tried to have a live stream event, even with a dog in the background, because I'm at home and I'm on my own and I have a dog, and I'm married, but I have a dog, and of course the dog came in and was involved. So you've had that. But what have we done? We've talked about CPD. We've talked about its importance. Okay. We've talked about active learning, passive learning, and then just briefly, I've shared about what's coming up. Now I'm looking for questions and comments. If you have anything you'd like to share, email me at info@nilsbirdtraining.com. That's possible, right? After that, you can also follow me on Twitter at Nilsbtraining, and I'm on Facebook at Nilsbtraining as well. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much, Abel, for the comment. I hope everybody enjoyed that, even with the little hiccups. I apologize about that. And my next live stream event will be in November, because in December, because I am an examiner, and therefore it's difficult to do anything other than exam marking during the exam marking time. If anybody you have that experience, you'll understand what I mean. So thanks very much for watching, and I apologize again for the interruptions, but I hope you've got something out of my first live stream event. Thanks very much, and bye for now.